I'm Tim Vail. I'm the Water Business Group Manager for the Texas Gulf Coast. I came to HDR 3.5 years ago after a career military service. In my military service, I spent about a third of my career in the Army Corps of Engineers or above the Army Corps of Engineers at the policy level with the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I got in 203, into the 203 business largely in command. So the first 203s that I started to work were those where I encouraged a non-federal sponsor to actually pursue a study under 203 authority, because quite honestly, I was limited in terms of how I could support them otherwise.
I think, like Tim, I was a district engineer or district commander in San Francisco and Kansas City, and had also done a stint in DC working for the headquarters of USACE before I joined HDR. So currently with HDR, I'm the North Central Region Water Resource Management Market Sector Lead, but what I could see in this position is a need for communities to have an opportunity to do large-scale water resource projects, and the 203 is a mechanism to do that. I
come from 26 years of military service, broken up into 3 different careers between program management, leading troops. There is no greater service one can provide and no greater honor than leading men and women in combat. So when I had an opportunity to establish a career after military service, I talked to HDR, and HDR said, Tim, you can be a water resource developer. You can be in the water group. You can follow your passions. And that's ultimately how I came into this position.
So I went to West Point, and while there, majored in environmental engineering. That's where I was exposed to the authorities that the Corps of Engineers had from 1824 till now for rivers and harbors and infrastructure across the U.S., and said, maybe I can help with that. And then kept my military journey going, which took me through Santa Barbara into San Francisco. And in San Francisco, like Tim, I got to see all the authorities of the Corps of Engineers on its civil works side, from navigation to the regulatory program and a few other things. The other part I saw there that made me very interested and knowledgeable about HDR is FIRO, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations. I signed the first water control manual deviation that was done as it relates to FIRO. Which company did the modeling behind it? Forward Engineering, which is now HDR. And so I got to see what HDR did with a brown bag with Mike Kay in 2018. So it built trust with the products that were coming in. HDR was doing modeling that the Corps didn't want to undertake. And I kept that in my hip pocket. The other part I saw in California is many entities wanted to start feasibility studies and take large infrastructure projects on, and they didn't have a vehicle or venue to do that. Right. Their studies were too low to get appropriated. So I put that in the back of my mind. Then I went and worked in DC for the headquarters and got to see 17 chiefs reports go through and learned how different studies were done across the nation. And then went to Kansas City and established the largest planning portfolio west of the Mississippi in the Corps of Engineers in my last job. But like Tim, we have a mandatory retirement date. It's an up or out system. So I had to leave the Corps of Engineers, although I very much enjoyed my time there, and was looking around to see where can we still make a difference for the communities in the nation. And HDR looked like the right place to do that. One of those reasons is saw the quality that was being delivered for our customers. The other reason was the chance to get those municipalities and those localities that couldn't get a large-scale feasibility study to go started.
Commanders learn very early on in their career to trust but verify. So we spend many late nights reviewing every statute, every regulation, making sure that the depositions that you're about to provide are true. And that really pulls us into the world of policy review and policy expertise. And that's what gives us the moral clarity and surety to command. And now we get to bring that through HDR to our clients.
And I think to add practical experience, with Tim and I sitting here, that means we've signed feasibility studies or made district engineer recommendations that are in, for me, I know we've got stuff in WRDA 20, WRDA 22, WRDA 24, and positioned for WRDA 26 at this table.